Hi, my name is Mark Smiley, and I've been asked to tell you what makes me laugh and what makes me cry. I can point to one experience in particular in which both happened. I've always loved hands-on mission work. I felt it was a great way to do spiritual therapy for myself, to go to a place where people live very different lives than I do and attempt to learn from them as well as give back anything I can. I remember one particular mission trip in which we were visiting a house, a beautiful location, way up in the country, great view, but a very simple house, very simple house. The people of the house were very proud that they had electricity. And I wondered how they did that because I saw no wires or anything. Well, what it turned out is that a gentleman once a week would take a car battery, strap it to the back of a mule, go into town, charge his battery at the local hardware store, carry it back up the mountain on the mule, and then they had electricity for the week. I thought that was fascinating. The same trip also made me cry when I arrived home. I had seen some pretty harsh conditions of poverty, and I got to my house. It was nighttime and it was hot outside. Just about every light was burning, more than one electrical light bulb in each room. The air conditioner was just blazing away, and I remember falling to my knees and just weeping. I felt humbled and ashamed and grateful all at the same time. There was still so much for us to do.
One of the most important things, I think, in my life, both as a layperson and now in ministry, is to observe time in the morning when I listen for God, both in reading scriptures and in reading writings of other people. I often call this my love letters from God, and He often speaks to me through other people and through the scriptures that I read. For some reason, it just seems like most days these things speak to things that are going on in my life at that time, and it's a very special time, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. I started observing it many years before I was called into ministry, and that time, even if I have to get up earlier to attend an early morning meeting, it is something that is important, and I think it is important for all clergy people and lay people to observe.
I'm Mary Conaway. What moments in ministry will I remember? Well, I will always remember my very first church and that was John Wesley Waterbury United Methodist Church that I was upon. I always say that's where I cut my teeth. The members there had a pastor that was not a United Methodist pastor. So I was in a position that I was very comfortable in teaching. I had taught school for 20 years. And we all purchased the discipline because they didn't have disciplines, and we all learned the discipline together.
My name is Ken Fell. What time did I really feel God's presence in a dramatic way? For me, it was when I was ordained an elder. I knew God's presence as I went through the process for probationary membership, but that final step was really a dramatic moment for me, and I felt God's presence as I was ordained an elder.
Lewis Shockley. Identify a moment when I felt the presence of Jesus Christ in a dramatic way. I think when we were doing the recognition of World Day of Prayer, and there was some conversation about whether or not we should go out in the streets. We made a decision that we would go into the streets, give people an opportunity to stop at our station, realizing that we were going to probably have about 5,000 or better people pass us, not knowing what would happen. Our congregation set up stations around the block, and hundreds of people stopped to pray and told us their stories of what God had done. And some had not been in a church in many a year, and some just wanted to know if it would be okay after the prayer if they could go into the church. That was indeed very, very Jesus moment in my life.
Hi, I'm Dick Mortimer. I am retiring from the Fork and Wall Charge in Baltimore County. I think my favorite memory of ministry actually goes back to when I was serving First Church in Lunaconing. And we had a very active Sunday school. We used to do all sorts of things. We'd take the kids on trips to Kennywood Park. And, I remember doing a river baptism with the children at one point. But I think my favorite memory is a time when it had been snowing, as it always seemed to snow all winter out there in Lunaconing. And we decided that we were going to have a Sunday school outing at the local park on Dan's Mountain. So we all went up on the park and started sledding. And I kept going down the hill over and over again. I think I had as many as 6 children on my back at the same time. We'd go flying down the hill, crash into the fence at the bottom. Everyone would roll off, and then they'd say, "Pastor, let's do it again." And we did it again and again and again. I think that's about my favorite memory.
Hi, I'm Ann Atkins, and I've served in the Baltimore-Washington Conference for about 25 years. My most memorable moments in ministry came with working with Reverend Dennis Dorsch. He's my spiritual mentor and guide, and he taught us how to feed and care for the homeless in Washington, D.C. Every Sunday night he would take people from his church and other folks that wanted to go. And one Sunday night it was just he and I, and we went to the Canadian Embassy and started there and did the route, served about 150 homeless people on the street, 200 folks, and it was snowing, and it was beautiful, and it was one of the best times that I can remember, just he and I talking about ministry and about life and caring for those who were in need.
Hi, I'm David Wentz. The 3 things that have given me the most joy in my ministry, number 3, I guess, would be planning and writing sermons. Number 2 is the excitement when people discover the presence and the gifts and the power of the Holy Spirit. And of course, the most joyful thing is when people understand the gospel and give their hearts to Jesus Christ. The things that have saddened me the most, well, I'm saddened by con artists who talk me out of God's money by their sob stories. I'm saddened by weddings where God is less important than the photographer. But the saddest thing is the divisions that have arisen among us, and the fact that we talk about everything except the root cause of them, which is the different ways that we understand the authority and interpretation of the Bible. Paula and I have been incredibly blessed over the last 34 years of pastoral ministry. We thank God for that. We thank you for that. And we're excited to see what God has for us in the next phase of our ministry. God bless you.
What one bit of wisdom would Mark Smiley share with this year's ordinands? I would say there is great value in doing work with your hands as part of ministry, working with the people to do mission trips or to cook the chicken for the chicken supper, but you don't want to do too much of that. I was taught in seminary that you should never learn how to run a mimeograph machine, or else you'll run it all the time. So for me, it's important to keep my hand in with the people and lead the people, but not do it all myself. And I think that's good advice for you too. Nowadays, if you know how to work a mimeograph machine, we'll give you a medal because nobody else uses mimeograph machines. But have a good balance of working with people, modeling with people what it means to be in Christian service.
I'm Ruth Dixon, and I think that the most dramatic time that I felt the presence of God was sitting in annual conference when the clergywomen were celebrating 50 years of ordination, and they were singing, "Hush, hush, somebody's calling your name." And I very clearly heard Ruth as being called, and really was surprised to hear that, because I was already retired from another profession and thought that it would not be possible for me to enter into the ministry at this point in my life. And yet I heard God calling my name.
When I look back, what makes me laugh and what makes me cry? That's a difficult question because I cry a lot. I laugh because I did a confirmation. It was my very first confirmation. It was the first time that the mothers and the children were in the confirmation class. They had never had confirmation. And so it was a joyous time. It made me cry because I had people, young adults, that wanted to become a part and know everything about the confirmation process. But then afterwards, we all went skating, and everybody could skate but me. And I ended up, two little children, I guess about 12, were trying to help me skate, and all three of us landed on the floor together. And that made me laugh. I was quite sore that Sunday, though, when I had to preach. But that's one of the things that made me laugh. And the first thing, as I said, made me cry was because the mothers wanted to be a part of the confirmation class with their children.
My name is Ken Fell. What moment in ministry will I always remember? That would be a time when, it was about 10 years ago, and very early in my ministry there was a situation, and I was dealing with a parishioner, and I really felt I hadn't connected, I hadn't been able to reach out with God's love to that parishioner. But that parishioner sought me out at the church I was serving and told me that they did indeed feel God's love in that time earlier in their life.
What moment in ministry will I always remember? I will certainly remember a moment in one of the congregations I was privileged to serve when we were talking about ways to increase the energy and ways to increase the vitality of the church. And our minister of music at that time had an assistant's job on a university campus. And he says to me, "Pastor, what if I have the marching band on their way up from a basketball game to stop off at the church in the middle of the service and just kind of get the congregation up?" And I said, "Well, I think if you can pull something like off, that would be really, really great if you could pull that off." Not really knowing that 2 weeks later, midway through the service, I got a nudge from the minister of music. "The band's here. Can you let them in?" And I said, "You really mean the marching band is here?" He said, "All 230 of them. And they're waiting to come in the sanctuary. They're going to play When the Saints Go Marching In." I said, "Oh my goodness." And they did it. All 200 and some just paraded around the sanctuary, got people on their feet. The drums were playing, the cymbals were beating, the band players were just absolutely, and the people went crazy. I thought that was the end of my ministry, but it went over quite well. I'll certainly never forget that moment.
Hi, this is Dick Mortimer. I think one of the most dramatic times for me was when we were in Lonaconing and we had a river baptism with the Sunday schoolers and their parents. A lot of the children had never been baptized, and a lot of the parents, for that matter, had never been baptized either. And we went down to the river at a local park, And we actually had a guest who was with us at that time. He was an actor who was portraying the part of Simon Peter. And the children in the family, all families would come out into the water, some of them very, very young, some of them were adults. And it was very, very moving for me to think of all these people who had been with the church but had never made an actual firm commitment to Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And I was very thankful to be able to be part of that.
Hi, I'm Ann Atkins. I've served the Baltimore Washington Conference for some 25 years. What bit of wisdom would I share with the ordinands? I would say make sure that you take time to spend time with God in quality Bible study on your own and a quiet time. Do your readings and writings, as John Wesley would tell you. Find somebody that can be your spiritual mentor and guide, someone you trust, who's been in ministry, who has your back, who has an understanding of people, no offense to anyone, but especially church people, and to stay in that relationship as long as that you can, and make sure you stay close to God.
My name is Ken Fell. When I look back, what makes me laugh, what makes me cry? I don't cry too often. They have been personal times that I've, when there's been traumatic events in my life of a more personal nature. But within my ministry, I've always tried to find the joy and the humor. And I think what makes me laugh is remembering some of the mistakes I made and finally realizing it wasn't the end of the world because I made a mistake.
Lou Shockley, when I look back, what makes me laugh and what makes me cry? What indeed makes me laugh are the just tremendously gifted people in the life of the church who, when you call upon them to hold the position, to hold the job, who always say, oh no, I'm not qualified to do that, knowing quite well that they're just waiting for a moment to have a position in the church. And they find a way to come around and say, I guess I will take that position. I guess that will do that. If you think I'm able. The tears, of course, come in moments when families are separated as a result of misunderstandings. Things don't go well in a child's life or in a husband's life or life of a wife. And seeing the misery and the brokenness has indeed over the years brought a tremendous number of tears, my heart and my entire being, watching something like that occur.
This is Dick Mortimer. One of the things that I think is about one of the most moving things was a time when I was working in Hedgesville, and we had a lay witness mission, and it was a very enjoyable, dramatic time. At the same time, there were some folks who were very opposed to having that mission and who really didn't understand what we were doing. But those who were part of it really, I think, got an awful lot out of it. And it was a time of laughter and also a time of tears. I felt good for the folks who were gaining so much from that, and sad for the ones who really didn't seem to understand what the entire mission was all about.
My name is Ruth Dixon, and the moment that I probably will remember most is being called to the bedside of someone who was transitioning, and being there with the family, offering them comfort and care during this most poignant time in their lives. And those moments are the ones that I will remember the most.
During a Native American culture thing, it was really Native American Sunday, I brought the Native Americans to Crownsville. And my children had never seen them dressed in their regalia. And so they danced and the children danced, and it was just, it made me know that all kids get along. There is no discrimination of any kind. They all get along together. They don't look alike, they don't act alike, but they all got along very well. And that's how I felt God in a dramatic way, because it brought peoples of every kind together.
Hi, I'm Ann Atkins. I've served the Baltimore-Washington Conference for about 25 years. Where have I seen God work in the most dramatic way? Probably in the hospital, and being with people as they pass from this earthly life into the life of the hands of God. There was a dear lady at North Bethesda United Methodist Church named Bunny, and she was a wonderful woman of God and just loved the Lord and loved others, and she got breast cancer. And I was able to visit with her several times in the hospital before she died. But one of the questions that she asked me was, will God heal me, Ann? And I said, yes, Bunny, God will heal you, either on this side of heaven or on his side of heaven. And there was such a peacefulness in her face when she realized that she was still in God's hands, no matter what was going to happen to her. And so I believe that she passed into the hands of Christ, a very peaceful, assured person.
My name is Ken Fell. What one bit of wisdom would I share with this year's ordinands? Find the joy. Try not to let the stress or the doubts get the best of you. Trust the fact that God has called you and God will use you, and enjoy the ministry.
Lou Shockley, and what bit of wisdom would I share with this year's incoming class? I would pray that everyone who's accepted the love of Jesus Christ and the will and desire to serve Jesus Christ, to serve the church well. Not to have several different things going on in your professional career or life, but focus. Develop your time, your energy, and your commitment to serving the church.
This is Dick Mortimer. If I were to share a word of wisdom with the new incoming pastors, I think it would be to remember that when you come into a church, you come in with a box of yeses. The congregations, as you enter, they are looking forward to working with you. The families are looking forward to working with you. And in the beginning, you get a lot of yeses. Pastor, we'll try that. We'll do that, Pastor. We're going to have fun with that, Pastor. And my thought for the new ordinands would be, don't use up all those yeses. Keep on a friendly basis with the congregation. And don't be upset if you get a no once in a while, because perhaps, maybe, just maybe, and I learned this from my own experience, maybe some of them know a little bit more about ministry than you or I, when we first come out of seminary, ever could imagine.
Hi, I'm Ann Atkins, and I have served the Baltimore-Washington Conference for about 25 years. Probably one of my favorite funny moments, I guess, is when I went to D.C. with a dear friend of mine, Merlin Campbell, for the first time. She'd never served the homeless, and we went together, met Dennis in Accokeek, and went down to Washington. But it was about an hour and a half that we were in the car before we got to Accokeek. In the first part of the trip together, we were just chit-chatting about things and life and talking about our families and things like that. And then the closer that we got to Accokeek, you could just feel the anxiety rising in the car, you could, by the questions that Merle Lynn was asking about, do you feel safe? Has anybody ever come after you? Do we go off by ourselves? And I said, Merle Lynn, it's going to be okay. It'll be fine. And she said, okay. But you could tell, she was staying real tight, close to me. And so we started again at the Canadian Embassy and started moving through our route through DC that Sunday night. About halfway through, there's Merle Lynn walking through all kinds of homeless people, not a care in the world, offering a meal. Would you care for a meal? With a big smile on her face. And I just thought, boy, that was quite a transformation and such a fun thing to watch, to go from fear to absolute joy. So that has always touched my heart about that ministry with her.